small fry like you stands a chance against the mighty Nappa!
You talk tough, but you're nothing special.
You think an elite warrior like me is gonna let low-class scum like you treat me like this?
It looks like you're finally getting better.
There has been a litany of Dragon Ball video games. Not many of them have been RPGs like Kakarot though. The title offers a brilliant retelling of the Dragon Ball Z anime, featuring all of the biggest moments shown through beautiful cutscenes. The actual in-game combat is a lot of fun too. Fights are fast-paced and feel smooth, just like battles from the anime. The open world is also pretty interesting as it features plenty of different locations and contains some excellent side stories. It's hard to fully explain what sort of game control is. After all, there is nothing else out there quite like it. It falls under the action-adventure category, but you wouldn't exactly compare it to Tomb Raider or Assassin's Creed. The game takes place entirely within a strange place called the Old House, which serves as the headquarters for the Federal Bureau of Control, a government agency investigating paranormal activity. You play as one of their members, Jesse, and throughout the game you must attempt to put a halt to the invasion of a species known as the Hiss. You do so with a very fancy gun and a slew of special abilities that you acquire during the game. These powers are so impressive that you feel like a superhero or Jedi Knight while playing. Sea of Stars is very different from a modern RPG. It doesn't look like the Final Fantasy VII Remake or Mass Effect. This is a game clearly inspired by role-playing games from the 90s, particularly Chrono Trigger. As such, it has a retro art style and presentation. Plus, the turn-based combat feels old school too. Sea of Stars proves that all these elements can still work today, as this is a really fun RPG. In fact, reviewer Andrew King says it's one of the best turn-based RPGs I've played in some time. Andrew particularly liked the combat. Yet the story and characters aren't bad either. The basic premise revolves around two heroes who intend to save the world. However, things get more complex as their adventure gets rolling.
To hell with this place. I'm leaving. Try and stop me.
Being trapped anywhere is pretty bad, but hell might be the absolute worst place to be stuck. That is the situation facing the son of Hades, Zagreus, in the game named after his father. As Zagreus, you have to get out of the underworld. You try to do so by making your way through a bunch of randomly generated rooms filled with colourful enemies. You aren't expected to reach your destination on the first attempt. With each run, you get a little stronger and better. Throughout it all, the combat remains fast-paced and fun. Also, you get to meet a lot of interesting characters along the way.
Roman Reigns! Speared through the pod, my God!
And the plexiglass was just ripped out of its bearings. Vicious clothesline sends his opponent out to the floor. Surveying the situation, and here he comes.
Oh,
wow!
Man. Risking it all and able to connect like a homing missile.
Yearly sports titles are often criticized for being the same every year, but the WWE 2K series has dramatic shifts in quality. Some installments are good, while others are horrible. 2K24 is among the best though. It boasts smooth wrestling and beautiful visuals. On top of that, there are plenty of exciting modes. One of the best is the Myre's Career mode, which contains two fascinating storylines. In her review, Jade King says the game builds on the foundations of its predecessors and continues to add compelling features and ideas. Doom Eternal is a first-person shooter that doesn't let itself get bogged down too much in storytelling or cutscenes. This game is all about the action. You play as a person many call Doomguy, and you need to destroy countless demons to save the world. So the premise is straightforward. The combat is very fast-paced, as you're encouraged to be in perpetual motion while you deal with the large groups of varied creatures that you're meant to kill. Therefore, there is a significant focus on running around and shooting in this game. It's smooth and satisfying fun. In Stray, you play as an adorable cat. This isn't some sort of special feline with outstanding powers. They're a regular cat like the ones you can have as pets, except they're controlled by you. Unfortunately for the cat, they don't have a warm home. Instead, they find themselves trapped in a cyberpunk city filled with robotic creatures. The goal is to get out of there. This makes for a unique adventure game as you wander the city using your natural athleticism to climb and jump around. On top of that, you interact with things and solve puzzles to progress the narrative forward. It's also possible to just mess around by doing classic cat things, such as scratching the carpet and knocking stuff onto the floor for no reason. Set in the Like a Dragon universe, Judgment revolves around a struggling private detective, Takayuki Yagami. He solves all sorts of cases, but in Judgment he gets wrapped up in his most intriguing one. It revolves around a string of violent murders. This is a very serious narrative, but as this is a Yakuza title, plenty of wackiness is involved in the game too, particularly in the side cases and activities. What isn't a laughing matter, though, at least in your enemies' minds, is the excellent third-person combat, where you put a beating on your adversaries. In Botany Manor, you play as a retired botanist, and your goal is to plant and nurture some special flora. Don't worry, it's more exciting than it sounds. After all, you can't use regular botanist methods. Instead, you have to be creative in your attempts to grow these plants. This results in you having to solve a bunch of innovative and well-designed puzzles. You do so while walking around a beautiful manor. Its beauty is down to both the lovely architecture and the game's excellent art style. Grand Theft Auto 5 predates the Xbox One, never mind the Xbox Series XS. However, it has been re-released on the latest Microsoft system and remains an exceptional open-world action-adventure title. The interesting main story revolves around three criminals whose lives intertwine as they pull jobs together and try to get the government off their backs. Whether you're on a mission or in the open world, you can freely switch between the three characters that make up one of gaming's best trios. Whoever you're controlling, you'll shoot, drive, and generally cause havoc in the parody of Los Angeles called Los Santos.
Whoa, Abby!
Abby, everything okay?
Holy shit.
Supermassive Games Until Dawn never made it onto Xbox consoles, but its spiritual successor, The Quarry, has. In her review of the game, Jade King calls it an excellent survival horror experience with a strong cast of characters and a startling horror narrative. It revolves around a group of camp counselors whose departure from said camp is put on hold for an extra day due to car issues. So they stay for one last night, but while doing so they realize there is something horrific happening at the camp. Like Until Dawn, it's a narrative adventure style title where gameplay involves interacting with things, passing quick time events, and making decisions. Those decisions impact who lives and dies, so make your choices carefully. The Witcher 3 was initially released long before the Xbox Series XS was revealed to the world, yet CD Projekt Red was nice enough to release a complete edition for the new generation of consoles. This version comes with updated visuals and 2 amazing expansions, Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine. They're great, but the main selling point is the outstanding base game adventure that sees the famous Witcher, Geralt of Rivia, go on a mission to find his adoptive daughter, Ciri. It's an epic tale that's complemented well by a bunch of excellent side quests featuring their own exciting stories. Throughout it all, you use a mix of Witcher spells and sword fighting techniques to battle the many guards and monsters you encounter in this fantasy RPG world. All of the main Gears games are great in their own right, so it's no surprise that Gears 5 happens to be an excellent title too. It doesn't completely change the series, as it includes the familiar third-person shooting mechanics. Yet, as always, the cover system and gunplay feel very responsive and satisfying. Also, the story is compelling in this one. For once, it isn't about a member of the Phoenix clan. It's more about Kate Diaz and her family, which is a nice change of pace, especially as it turns into a pretty fascinating tale. Tales of Arise is an action-packed JRPG that tells a captivating story about 2 worlds, Dana and Rena. Before the game, Rena took over Dana and forced the people of the planet to be their slaves. You follow the adventures of a runaway slave and a young woman from Rena who has a vendetta against her own world. Together, they attempt to stop the oppression of the people of Dana. The 2 leads and many of the other characters are really interesting. The combat and exploration are equally impressive. Battles are wild, exciting, and most of all fun, and despite not being an open-world game, there are a lot of fascinating and beautiful places to see. In their review of Resident Evil Village, Jade King says the game crafts an experience that feels both refreshing and nostalgic in equal measure. This is because Village attempts to blend the old, scary Resident Evil titles with the more action-packed later installments. The result is both unnerving and exciting. The horror game puts you in the shoes of Ethan Winters, who also served as the protagonist in the previous game. In this title, he attempts to retrieve his kidnapped daughter, which means facing off against all sorts of weird and dangerous creatures. Thankfully, in most sequences, you have an array of weapons to help you out. Tunic is one of the most adorable Xbox Series XS games. The title's sweet art style makes both the protagonist and the environment look lovely. Yet this can also trick you into thinking you're heading into a casual, laid-back experience. In reality, this is a very challenging action-adventure game, primarily because you aren't guided in any way. There are no tutorials or objective markers, you have to figure it out on your own. The only help you get is from the manual pages you can find in the game. This helps make Tunic a unique experience and brings back memories of when games didn't hold your hand as much. Plus, it feels all the more rewarding when you solve a puzzle or defeat a dangerous enemy with your sword and items. In their review, Ki-Hoon Chan says there's no denying the irresistible charm of Tunic. At the end of their review of Tekken 8, George Foster says Tekken is back and is just as strong as it's ever been. That's a bold claim, considering how critically acclaimed the series has been throughout its entire history. Yet there is a lot to love about this Tekken game. The developers have made a few changes to the fighting mechanics to make it as fast-paced and fluid as ever. Plus, the story mode tells a truly compelling tale. And the cherry on top is that the game contains several features that make it easier for newcomers to get acclimatized to the series. The base Devil May Cry 5 predates the Xbox Series XS, but it was later released on newer systems as a special edition. This version doesn't present a huge change from the original, except you get an additional playable character in Virgil and upgraded visuals. Thankfully though, it's just as exciting and fun to play as it was in 2019. The game is incredibly action-packed as you fight all sorts of creatures in fast-paced battles, where you're encouraged to kill your opponents in ruthless and flashy ways. It's all very satisfying, and the combat has plenty of variety as you play as different characters who each feel distant to control. The story is equally wild and entertaining, making this one of the best action games in recent memory. Sometimes you may hear about a game getting a remake and think that it doesn't need one, as the original holds up very well. For some people, that was the case for the original Dead Space until this exceptional remake came out. At its core, it's still Dead Space, but it looks, sounds and plays much better. Plus, the story of Isaac Clarke exploring a spooky abandoned ship filled with monsters is all the more engaging now that the character actually speaks. As a result, Jade King, in her review, calls it the definitive version of Isaac Clarke's first chapter. Street Fighter has been one of the most famous fighting game series since the arcade days. Street Fighter 6 is among the best in the said series. It offers smooth and satisfying fighting mechanics and is a treat for the eyes with its beautiful visuals. The game also provides plenty of content, including a deep RPG-like mode set in the Street Fighter world. That may sound like an odd inclusion in a fighting game, but it works quite well, and it's optional, as you can ignore it entirely and still experience a full-fledged fighting game. In fact, in their review, George Foster says, as a fighting game, Street Fighter 6 is pretty much flawless. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is a sequel to 2019's Fallen Order, and like its predecessor, it's a classic Souls-like game. This means you use dodges and parries to protect yourself from being quickly wiped out by your adversaries. The game isn't as punishing as a Dark Souls title, however, due in part to all the fancy Force powers you have at your disposal. Whether you are using the Force or your lightsaber skills, the combat is engaging. The reason why you have both those options is because you're playing as a Jedi. He is named Cal Kestis, and alongside his allies, he is searching for a place safe from the Galactic Empire. In their review, Stacey Henley calls it an intimate, well-crafted story.
Come on. They're alive. Go. Get to sleep. Quick. Come on. Yes. Get back.
We've got intruders!
A Plague Tale Requiem is set in 14th century France during the 100 Years' War and the time of the Black Plague, so throughout the game you must deal with Inquisition soldiers and infected rats. While the rats go after anyone, the soldiers target you because your little brother is a unique individual with unusual blood. You control his older sister, who usually can't contend with these soldiers in regular fights. Therefore, you must use stealth and strategy to get by for much of the game. As for circumventing the rats, you usually have to complete clever puzzles to forge a path through them. This makes for a unique action-adventure experience that boasts brilliant visuals and a captivating story, making it a worthy follow-up to its predecessor, A Plague Tale Innocence. In their review, Issy van de Velde says the game weaves narrative drama and exploration with tense combat sections.
Make you bleed!
Assassin's Creed Valhalla is set during the Viking Age, and you play as a Viking named Ivar. Early in the game, they decide to set off on a new adventure in England. So they travel across the ocean and set up a settlement. Your job is to build it up and make alliances with nearby regions. The story is a strong one, even if it is a bit long. What's better, though, is the combat and climbing mechanics. They're both smooth and satisfying. The environment is excellent too, as it's vast, detailed and filled with things to do. As a result, it's a great exploration game.
Let us deal with these rebels!
Focus on the crabs, Peter. We'll try to keep them off of you.
One down! Are you making progress, Peter Quill?
Slowly but surely, looks like.
Slice and dice! Okay, shoot the clan! I can do this!
Take your time. Not busy or anything.
There's another one! All right!
After the questionable Marvel's Avengers game, it was hard to get excited for the next Square Enix published Marvel game. Yet Guardians of the Galaxy happens to be a wonderful action-adventure title. Much of this is down to the brilliant story and characters. The narrative revolves around a threat called the Promise, which is a danger to the galaxy, so to live up to their name, the titular characters must be on hand to guard it. In classic Guardians fashion, though, they don't let impending doom stop them from making plenty of great jokes, as the game is filled with humour. Yet the protagonists aren't just silly all the time, as some of the game's best quotes are deeply powerful ones. So the title boasts some really good writing in both the comical and serious moments. The unique combat where you fight and instruct your team at the same time is good too.
먼저やるか.
The Judgment spin-off series has managed to step out of the main Yakuza series' large shadow and become its own thing. Lost Judgment is great proof of that since it doesn't focus too much on Yakuza clans. Instead, it's a lot more about high school students and faculty. This may sound a bit tame for the Yakuza series, but that's not the case, as the compelling main story touches on plenty of serious topics from bullying to suicide. Plus, the whole narrative revolves around a murder investigation. Meg Pelicchio, in her review, calls it an intricately woven plot with an interesting cast of characters. One of those characters is Takayuki Yagami, who is an easy-to-like protagonist that is tasked with solving the murder case. Equally easy to like is the abundance of exciting side content in the game and the fast-paced beat-em-up combat.
It's just so good to see you again. Welcome to Haven.
This place is pretty sweet.
I'm glad you two met. Is this dude my best friend?
And this dude hands me the best beers.
Alex, right? I'm Steph. I didn't realize
That we all knew you were coming.
for the first time in years.
Well, what do you think?
I love it. I really let myself believe.
Welcome home.
Like the previous Life is Strange games, True Colors is a narrative adventure title. This time you play as a young woman named Alex Chen who reunites with her brother after years away. They meet up in the small town of Haven. As this is Life is Strange, what starts as a wholesome premise quickly goes downhill. Without going into spoilers, some messed up stuff starts happening. Thankfully, Alex has a unique power where she can see and manipulate people's emotions. So perhaps she can use this ability to get to the bottom of what's going on. It's an emotional and gripping game all the way through. Reviewer Jade King says the title truly is something special.
Target located. Ready to fire.
There has been a surprising amount of Star Wars Lego games, so you'd be forgiven for not being interested in the Skywalker saga, but if you're a Star Wars and Lego fan, then you should be interested. After all, this is easily the most complete Lego Star Wars game ever. It covers all the main 9 Star Wars movies and contains an unbelievable amount of characters. As reviewer James Troughton puts it, the Skywalker saga goes above and beyond to bring Star Wars Galaxy to life. Plus, it's also better as a game since combat is much improved. It boasts satisfying cover shooting and decent lightsaber combat.
Mary Jane.
Hey, Eddie, I know that's just Lilith talking through you or whatever. Shut up already.
No time to... Your web is broken, little spider. Your plan has failed.
You may be right. This symbiote sample is not worth your life, Spider-Man. You can find another way.
Tell that to Aunt May, Mary Jane, Harry, Flash, Felicia, Otto, and about 9 million other New Yorkers we're trying to save. If getting that sample means we can stop your mother from destroying...
Marvel's Midnight Suns is a unique game in general, never mind a unique superhero game. After all, it's an action RPG with turn-based combat and deck-building mechanics, with a few social simulation elements thrown in. In their review, Eric Switzer says it pursues a vision one made of seemingly disparate parts and strange ideas and succeeds at practically every turn. The missions and turn-based combat are very enjoyable, as is hanging around with the likes of Spider-Man. The Web Slinger is just one of many heroes on the roster, as you get a full team of Marvel characters led by your customizable protagonist, the Hunter. You come together to stop your character's evil mother, who is a danger to the world.
Breathing down my neck.
Cyberpunk 2077 had one of the worst launches in recent memory as it came out with a litany of bugs and barely functioned. Pretty much all of that has been fixed though. The Xbox Series XS version is now an incredible action RPG with smooth combat and a beautiful open world. The story is compelling too. It revolves around a customizable merc called V, who is attempting to make their name in the futuristic Night City. In an effort to acquire money and notoriety, they participate in a heist that changes their life forever. It's a fascinating main tale, but you shouldn't overlook the slew of excellent side quests too, as they're equally interesting. From Software made some of the best games of the previous console generation, so of course the company also put its stamp on the Xbox Series XS era with Elden Ring. In her review, Jade King claims it combines Dark Souls' natural sense of discovery with the foreboding atmosphere of Bloodborne. This is seen in its intriguing open world that's called The Lands Between. The place is filled with different places to go and things to see, and while exploring you're likely to run into a whole host of enemies, from standard foes to serious bosses. As this is a From Software game, these battles are very difficult. Much of the fun comes from overcoming these adversaries using strategy and perseverance. Resident Evil 4 was one of the best games on either the GameCube or PS2 back in 2005. Now, the remake is among the greatest Xbox Series XS titles. While the story, characters and general formula are the same, pretty much everything else has been rebuilt from the ground up. Therefore, this action-heavy survival horror title feels fresh. The visuals are impressive, the shooting is fun, and the whole experience is scarier than the original. Altogether, you have an incredible Resident Evil game that made reviewer Eric Switzer say, "I just don't think games get much better than this." The Xbox Series XS is home to some fantastic co-op games. Few are as creative and clever as It Takes Two. It's hard to pin down what genre it really fits into. This is because the game continually changes up mechanics for each level, which is why reviewer Kirk McKeon called it the most varied game I have ever played. This sounds like it could be confusing, but the switch up of mechanics is always done seamlessly and is well explained. Most of all though, each new mechanic is fun and the cooperative play is brilliant. That would be enough for any game to be great, but this title also offers a surprisingly deep story and beautiful visuals.
So, what are you getting, Frank?
Frank.
Huh?
Holy shit!
But I need my things in there.
Done before closing.
This is the Vault, 47. The data core should be behind that large steel door.
I need...
The game formerly known as Hitman 3 is now Hitman World of Assassination, which not only includes the levels from the third reboot game but also the previous two, so it's jam-packed with content. This wouldn't mean much if the core gameplay experience was weak. Thankfully, it's one of the best stealth games on the console. Part of the reason is the diverse and open levels that allow you to go about your business, aka killing people how you see fit. The game also contains a high level of detail and an impressive amount of replayability. So, to put it simply, it's classic Hitman, and Kirk McKeon says in their review it's an outstanding refinement of that unique 21-year-old recipe. Cocoon is one of the more original and creative puzzle games available on the Xbox Series XSS. In it, you play as an unnamed insect that can move worlds. This is because the worlds are contained in orbs that you carry around. And you can use the orbs to travel between distinct places. That's not all you do though, as while you're making your way through each place you solve any puzzles in your path. Most of them are creative and challenging. Yet the controls are really simple. So it's only your mind being tested, not your video game skill. Your mind is certainly being tested when it comes to understanding the story, as there is no clear narrative or plot. You have to work out the meaning behind everything yourself. Reviewer Jaime Latour says it's maybe a bit too mysterious, however, it doesn't hurt the overall enjoyment of the game. Reviewer Jade King says Alan Wake 2 easily stands alongside the giants of the survival horror genre and often surpasses them. This could be considered surprising as Remedy doesn't typically go full-on survival horror for its titles. But Alan Wake 2 certainly fits into the genre as it has plenty of spooky and unnerving moments. Yet the game also has humor, great storytelling and plenty of wackiness. The story follows two people. The titular character is naturally one of them, and he's in a creepy and surreal reality called The Dark Place. Also along for the ride is the detective, Saga Anderson, who is investigating a murder in the strange town of Bright Falls. As both characters, you must face off against plenty of strange monsters, which is where Alan Wake 2's unique combat system comes into play. You're encouraged to use your torch to burn away the darkness that protects the enemies before you finish them off with more traditional weaponry. The original Persona 5 wasn't released on the Xbox Series XS, but the not-quite remake Persona 5 Royal was, and it was worth the wait. The title is one of the most creative and original you will ever play. The narrative revolves around a vigilante group of teens who intend to change the hearts of evil adults by going into a special realm. It sounds complex, but the game explains the concept well. Each evil adult you target has their own palace built from their subconscious. You explore them and take part in exciting turn-based battles in the process. When you're not inside these strange places, the game turns into a life simulator. Both parts of the game are interesting and engaging. All of it makes reviewer Santi Liguiza say that Royal is as immaculate as it was years ago, a masterful port of a masterpiece. As a sequel to Ori and the Blind Forest, Ori and the Will of the Wisps continued the simple yet gripping tale of Ori in this beautifully stunning Metroidvania. If you haven't ever played the original, then of course that is the go-to, but if you have, then the follow-up is perfect for fans who enjoyed the game. A new adventure in a new land, and with a new friend, Ori and the Will of the Wisps will keep you enamored for the entire journey. Jamie Lutter said it is undeniably a captivating, marvelous game in their review. One that many may not have heard of, or at least seen it pop up on Game Pass and then never tried it. Hi-Fi Rush is an incredibly stylish and action-packed rhythm game that is worth playing. If you want to jump into something simple that'll keep you entertained for a while, you can't go wrong here, and as mentioned, it launched on Game Pass too, so it's completely accessible if you are on the fence. It stands out well amongst the many games available and easily takes its place as one of the best games to play on Xbox Series XS, one of the most memorable, perhaps not, one of the most fun. Absolutely. The follow-up to the classic platformer on the original Xbox, Psychonauts 2 continues the adventures of Raz as he works as a psychonaut, delving into people's minds and attempting to stop a conspiracy within the organization. As a platformer that harkens back to the days of early 3D video games, Psychonauts 2 blends nostalgia with modern capabilities to create a worthwhile experience. Reviewer George Foster says it is leaps and bounds ahead of the original game in pretty much every way. Even if you haven't played the first game, which is playable on Series X with backwards compatibility, this game is absolutely worth the time. If you've ever felt the urge to leave landlubbing life behind and take to the seas, but you don't have the slightest bit of knowledge, funds, or realistic desire to actually do so, well, that's where Sea of Thieves comes in. Or, if you just want to be a pirate for a bit. Play solo or with a crew of friends or strangers, and head out on your ship as you seek treasure and riches. Beware of other players, though, as they might try to take your treasure. Or they might just attack you for fun. Either way, with ongoing content, Sea of Thieves is one of the best games to play on Xbox Series XS and one of the best multiplayer games on the console. for the first time in the series' history, like a dragon, infinite wealth takes you overseas, as it's primarily set in Hawaii. You play as Ichiban Kasuga from the previous game and series protagonist Kazuma Kiryu. The former is looking for his mother, while the latter is dealing with cancer. In classic Like a Dragon fashion, the narrative quickly becomes more profound and complex as you play through it, and as always with this series, it's a compelling story. The wacky turn-based combat is fun too. It builds on the foundations set in the previous installment, which was the first to go a turn-based route. The title also boasts some great visuals, wonderful characters, and enjoyable sub-stories. In fact, reviewer Meg Policcio believes it raises the bar in every way to take its rightful place as the new peak of the series. Taking the role of a Grim Reaper, Death's Door takes the afterlife and makes it a whole lot cuter. As a collector of souls, you play as a little crow who must venture into a land untouched by death in order to get back the soul that was stolen from you. This is a cute little isometric game that takes after games such as The Legend of Zelda and Titan Souls, offering up some fun combat and intriguing puzzles. Earn new abilities and make your way through each region as you fight to achieve your goal. It's a game that is worthy of most players' time. This one can be fun for many reasons, but regardless, Microsoft Flight Simulator is a fantastic game. You might have a genuine interest in the piloting profession and wish to explore that. You might want to glide through the skies as you de-stress after a day at work, or you may just want to find your own house before accidentally crashing into a bunch of structures around the world. Using the globe and 3D maps as the game map, you can travel anywhere in the world via a selection of vehicles, large and small. Whether you're flying a helicopter over the skies of LA or in a Boeing going from one side of the world to the other, there's a feeling of freedom that you don't really get with any other game. Stuck in a time loop and forced to repeat the same day over and over again, Deathloop sees you play as Colt Vaughn as he attempts to end this cycle that he's trapped in. On a small island with radical figures, he must take them all down in a single day before everything resets, or die trying, and it'll reset anyway. With a changing world that will adjust depending on the order of events and how you handle things, this is one big puzzle game as you make your way through each mission. To make matters worse, you will be hunted by Juliana, which will either be AI or can be controlled by other players invading your game online. In Kirk McKeon's review, he says Juliana completely alters how you approach levels, so she adds another wrinkle to the whole experience. Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice sees you as follow the journey of Senua, a young girl that suffers from psychosis, as she travels realms of Norse mythology and battles foes and gods in an attempt to revive her lost love. To represent Senua's condition, you'll hear various voices throughout the course of the game, which is represented incredibly well to make you on edge and uncomfortable. Also, the more you die, the more Senua suffers from a physical affliction. Die too many times, and the game will end. It can be a challenge, but is a fantastic look into love, loss, and how Senua deals with everything she has gone through and continues to go through.
What was that? Some sort of radio signal? I wonder where it's coming from. Haha! Just like laser tag! Nothing happened. Looks like the other 2 lasers are blocked. After all that build-up, this big mysterious computer doesn't do anything. Man.
Many games will make you realize just how big the world is, but Grounded takes that a step further. In this survival game, you and some friends will play as kids who've been shrunk down to a minuscule size. Fend for yourself in a now colossal garden, all the while figuring out what happened and how to return to normal size. While most survival games follow the same formula, the setting of Grounded makes for a unique experience. No chopping down trees and crafting elaborate log cabins. Instead, chop down grass blades and build armor out of bug exoskeletons. Oh, and watch out for garden spiders.
Another disabled tour. I'll say one thing for the Banished. When they have an idea, they stick with it.
Though it ended up coming quite a bit later than anticipated, Halo Infinite launched in 2021 and fans loved it, considering the previous game had been met with less praise. Reviewer Jade King says Infinite is Halo through and through, right down to the graceful gunplay and masterful musical cues, which isn't something people said about Halo 5. What made it even more popular was the fact that the multiplayer modes for Halo Infinite are free, paired with continued content updates. It meant players had a lot to get stuck into. While still not considered the peak of Halo, it is still one that people love and will be a game waiting for anyone that picks up an Xbox Series XS. Without a doubt, Forza Horizon 5 is the game that needs to be installed on every Xbox Series console out there. While Forza Horizon 4's UK setting was a fresh and interesting location to race, the beautiful landscapes of Mexico make this entry a must-play. Whether you're a huge fan of racing and cars, or if you don't really know anything about them and just want to zoom around what reviewer Sam Watanuki calls a beautifully chaotic yet incredibly fine-tuned open world, this game is an easy choice. With so much to explore, challenges to complete, DLC to play around with, and community-made content, this game will always have a place on Xbox Series XS.
Flaming Brute! Fire flames! Blaze and burn!
No choice but to keep going.
Not many RPGs in recent memory have received as much praise as Baldur's Gate 3. For example, reviewer Ryan Bamsey says everything about the game is fine-tuned to provide a gripping experience that provokes wonder and joy. He even called the title a masterpiece that's very high praise, but it's what Baldur's Gate 3 deserves. After all, it's an exquisite turn-based RPG set in the world of Dungeons & Dragons. The storytelling and characters are brilliant, and the combat is enjoyable too. In fact, there's not much about the game that isn't great.